The year is 1934. Turmoil brews in Europe and Asia. Depression ravages America. The world stands on the brink of the most devastating war mankind has ever known. Upon this forbidding backdrop, a small ragtag band of unlikely heroes traverse the globe as they search for fortune, fame, glory, or at times even a way to save the world. The Empire Club.
All right, JB, here we go. We're picking up with episode 7. And we're picking up where we left off in episode 6, where the Empire Club was in Vienna. And we were meeting at the manor of Dr. Rainer Verletz and his little cadre of Nazi hunter spies, which included the brothers Gershwin. And Benedict Grey, one of the members of the Empire Club, Tom's character. And Tom had run the last session. Tom's character was arrested by Nazi stormtroopers for the murder of the German Nazi officer we met in your session previously on the Isle of Death and took back with us to Vienna. So we left off where the Nazis are storming the manor of Dr. Verletz as a mysterious gypsy girl makes off with some coded music from the Gershwin brothers as the Empire Club follow. And we pick up there. Episode 7, Long Trip on a Short Train. And this was your episode. You ran it. And you want to tell us about the title before I start reading?
I just thought it was a cool title.
Yeah.
I knew we were going to be on a train. I was going to put it on a train. And I just thought it was kind of a neat idea. It just seemed to work, the long trip on a short train.
Yeah.
It was just the kind of cadence of it.
It did. It has good rhythm. Yeah. All right, here we go. The Nazi stormtroopers brought pandemonium upon Gypsy King Rostov Drakul's camp as they made their entrance. Juliet and Max sped away on the motorcycle as Lord Merryweather and Kara set off for the train station to catch Nazi stormtrooper Major Wolfram Steinholtz and his prisoner, fellow Empire Club member Benedict Grey. Kara charmed the station master into telling her that people matching the description of Steinholtz's party were on a train headed to Berlin. The couple were accompanied by Drakul, incognito, making good on his promise to help the Empire Club rescue Benedict in return for their protecting his daughter from the Nazis. All right, so first of all, I just want to point out that I love it how when you're the GM, it's Max and Juliet's relationship that is sort of in the ascendancy, and then, as we'll see in the next episode, when Tom takes over as GM, it's the rivalry plays out in Benedict's favor. It's always funny. And, just to remind the audience, you and Tom had both built your characters, both of whom we imagine being played by Bruce Campbell. You both built your characters with a rival. And at some point you guys decided it would be a romantic rival, and that the romantic rival would be
each other. Right?
Well, yes, each other for the heart of Juliette Dupont.
Right.
Yes, one of the player characters. So this is where the rivalry really starts heating up. I love to see that. So okay, so there's that. Now, what can you tell us about the setup of this adventure? How you picked it up? I mean, the cliffhanger really was just Max jumping off of a roof onto a motorcycle as you saw the Nazis approaching the manor and heading into the forest also where the gypsy camp was to warn the gypsy camp and the rest of the members of the Empire Club that the Nazis are coming. I think it's interesting that you played on the fact that the Nazis also hunted the Rom, also hunted gypsies, not just the Jews were persecuted. So that was interesting that you brought that in. But tell us a little bit about the setup of this adventure.
The sure. There's a couple of movies I had just seen, and I'm not sure what something presented itself about the rum. I guess he had already set up that there was a camp of gypsies. I think he had set up that we had decided that we had taken off the end of the last episode, hadn't it? From Vienna, we had jumped on our motorcycle to go warn them from the last episode. So that was part of the setup of this one. I was kind of dealing with. In this one, I wanted to bring the Nazis directly into it because we'd only kind of given over their kind of henchmen, but it wasn't really, a full-fledged, Indiana Jones, brigade of Nazis. I hate these guys, and I think I can't remember where there must have been a couple of movies that I'd gotten like the idea of a gypsy camp from, and I think most of them were Hammer productions. So I kind of got that. I wanted to go into that, and I had known historically that they had imprisoned the Rom as well as the Jewish population in Germany and in Europe. But I think the train was the more important part of it because I had just watched a film, I think at the time, called Van Ryan's Express, which I'd seen before. And there was a time element that I liked about it because they were trying to escape the Germans on a train through Germany. And they had commandeered a train and they were trying to basically make it out of Germany. So there was like a time element almost involved. And I like that idea of them, making their way. Now they're on a train that's going to Berlin, the center of the center of the Third Reich. And if they didn't stop it, he was going to disappear into the center of the Third Reich. So I just liked the idea of the train and the time element and the fact that you were moving toward danger, but at the same time, you had to get onto the thing that was moving toward danger and actually save the person who was incarcerated, which I think at this point was Benedict, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I like adventures happening on the train. That's a very I think foreseen that at some point somebody would be fighting on top of the train.
Yeah.
And that trope is very, very pulp, very two-fisted pulp. So I thought,
right.
Oh, and another film that I'd seen that was very much like that was, it was a Sherlock Holmes film. Oh, it was The 7% Solution, which has a fight on the top of a train, an actual sword fight on the top of a train, I believe, maybe. In any case, yeah, that was something similar to that. So
right. Well, that's the perfect segue. So that brings us to our next paragraph. All right. So Heathcliff, Kara, and Dracul boarded the train only to discover that Benedict Grey was being held prisoner by armed SS soldiers in a private car in the front of the train. As the three tried to find a way inside, the train stopped at the Austria-Czech border, and more soldiers boarded, accompanying a rotund, balding Italian man in a cape, along with Kara's former guardian, Wilhelm Lipschitz. Dracul picked the pocket of the Italian, revealing him to be Professor Benito Ozymandias, occultist and advisor to Benito Mussolini. All right, so there's so much going on in this paragraph. So you started talking about the sword fight on the top of the train, and we'll get to that in the next paragraph. But in this paragraph, we are introduced to two characters who carry through a good bit of the rest of our campaign, and they are Wilhelm Lipschitz and Ozymandias, Benito Ozymandias. So let's start with Professor Wilhelm Lipschitz. So I don't remember if Michelle built her player character Kara with an advantage, like mentor or something like that. I don't even remember if Champions had a mentor advantage, but something akin to that.
I think it did.
Contact, okay. where Wilhelm Lipschitz was the mentor, and his backstory was developed then, or if it was kind of like the romantic rivalry that your and Tom characters had, where it was just sort of adumbrated in the character sheet and then developed sort of at the last minute as we were either in media res or in preparation for the session. I don't recall which, but I do remember that I came up with the name Lipschitz because, and maybe even Wilhelm, I don't know, because I remember Michelle like sort of turning to the group and going, what would be a good last name, or what would be a good name? And I said, how about Lipschitz? And the reason I threw that out is because my mother thinks that is the funniest surname in existence. Like, anytime somebody says Lipschitz, she can't stop from laughing because, it's got that phoneme in it that kind of sounds a little off color. And it just tickles her. That's an actual real life surname. So
anything that puts a mouth and feces together,
right,
gotta be funny.
Yeah, it's the human centipede of surnames. So, anyway, so I just thought it was funny. And I threw it out there, and I expected, Michelle to scoff at it. And she's like, Lipschitz it is. And I was like, oh, okay. There we go. But
that's one thing I really liked about our group was it was very open to, what do you guys think?
Right.
Because we were really all inventing the story, even though we were tag team throwing out the kind of center of it to everybody. People could stop and really go, what would be cool here? Or, she could throw out to everybody and feel completely safe doing it.
Yeah.
Just saying, what's good here,
Yeah.
And we came up with, or you came up with something at that point, but that didn't happen again and again. I think in this game and in other games. It was nice about that group. We got very comfortable with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and the creativity... we fed off of each other's creativity. We sort of helped each other creatively. So there was on our old GeoCities website, there was a hyperlink. Every time someone's name appeared in one of these episode summaries, there was a hyperlink on the name. You could click on the name. It would take you to the allies or enemies section of the website where there were...
And you also had to take a drink, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And there were little dossiers on all of the NPCs. So this is what the Wilhelm Lipschitz's dossier said. To outsiders, Wilhelm appears to be a manservant of Kara Almud, but he is, in fact, her mentor. He has overseen her mentalist training from an early age, introducing her to the people who could best help her develop her skills and abilities. He was also an espionage agent during the Great War, smuggling treasures out of occupied territories with a crack team of agents, including Mr. Darby, whom we'll meet later on in the campaign. Resourceful and ruthless, he is able to facilitate whatever needs Kara may have. And Wilhelm himself is infused with mana, the energy of magic. So there's more, but it reveals some spoilers, and we'll get to that as
he's our Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He's our Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's exactly right. So he appears for the first time. And shockingly, I always thought that Professor Benito Ozymandias was Tom's brainchild. But he appears for the first time here.
I'm wondering how that happened. Because I remember running this, I thought.
Yes, you most definitely ran this.
How I got hold of that character.
He was obviously your NPC. I mean, he appears for the first time here. So I always thought he was Tom's. And it was interesting because it wasn't, even while I was rereading these summaries in anticipation of today's recap, even in the midst of it, knowing that this was your session, I came across Professor Benito Ozymandias, and I was like, oh yeah, this was the first time Tom introduced Professor Ozymandias. And so I was thinking to myself, well, I should talk about the mystery of Ozymandias' name or potential identity and say how, it's like a mystery, but it doesn't have to be a mystery because I'm sitting here with the person who created it. Or maybe you don't remember, maybe it's still a mystery. But let me just say that Ozymandias, the name Ozymandias, is the Greek translation of the throne name of Pharaoh Ramesses II, who was the most powerful pharaoh in ancient Egypt, as far as we could tell from records. And he was also known as Ramesses the Great. He was the third ruler of the 19th dynasty, and many say that dynasty, the new kingdom between the 16th and the 11th century BC and the other dynasties in that period, that was when Egypt was most powerful. So he was the most powerful pharaoh of the most powerful era of ancient Egypt. And so his throne name, that's the first two names of a pharaoh that appear in the cartouche, which is that oval-shaped symbol, sigil, where the pharaoh's names are written. The throne name in ancient Egyptian is Usermatre Setepenre, and the Usermatre is translated into Greek as Ozymandias. Now, Ramesses II. You may remember him from great works like like Norman Mailer and Anne Rice, who wrote novels about him. But he was also speculated to be the pharaoh of Egypt during the Exodus of the Hebrews. The Bible really doesn't identify who the pharaoh was, but people think that it was Ramesses II, played brilliantly by Yul Brynner in the movie The Ten Commandments, right? And he's also the Prince of Egypt pharaoh, the movie The Prince of Egypt, the animated movie, and Ray Fiennes voices Ramesses II in that film. And he's just all over popular media, Ramesses II. But the name Ozymandias, the Greek name, was really made popular by Percy Bysshe Shelley, the poet. And I just want to pause here to say I feel really bad for Percy Shelley to have to go through middle school with a middle name like Bysshe. I mean, just off the top of my head, I could figure out ways to torment that poor kid with his middle name. I mean, it's just too easy. I really feel bad for him. No wonder he became a poet, a romantic poet. Anyway, Percy Bysshe Shelley, he was one of the romantic poets of 19th century Britain, and he wrote a poem called Ozymandias, and it was about the decline of rulers and their hubris. And so I was always wondering, since Tom liked Cthulhu, the Cthulhu mythos a lot, but so do you, actually. I always wondered if, thinking that this was Tom's NPC, if Professor Ozymandias was supposed to be the reincarnation or the immortalized, mummified personage of Ramesses II, Ramesses the Great. And because there are a lot of works in the Cthulhu mythos that draw, I think Nyarlathotep, the great old one, or whatever he is.
Nyarlathotep.
Yeah, he's an ancient Egyptian deity, or at least the ancient Egyptians deified him. Right. There's a lot of ties in the Cthulhu mythos to things that went on in ancient Egypt. So I always wondered, but it's not Tom's character, it's your character. So let me ask you, where did you get the name Professor Benito Ozymandias from?
Well, I would love to be able to claim that I did all of the research that you're suggesting, but I stole it from the Watchmen.
You stole it from the Watchmen. Right. Of course.
There's a character called Ozymandias.
Ozymandias. That never even occurred to me. And I even saw the Watchmen. That's hilarious. As a matter of fact, I have a funny story about the Watchmen. So, I was not a big comic book guy. And so there were those folks in our gaming group who were, especially John Sloan. The other John. That's why we call you JB, because we had you're the Jonathan, but he was John. And John was a huge comic book guy. And when he found out that I was into gaming and stuff like that, and I had all this nerd cred, but that I was sorely lacking in the field of comic book knowledge, he was like, "Well, Rob, I'm just going to select the comics that you need to read from my collection. I'm just going to give them to you, and you can read those." And then this way, so he gave me Kingdom Come. He gave me Batman and the Gun. He gave me all these Samaritan from Astro City, those things.
Astro City, right?
And he gave me The Watchmen. And I'll never forget, at the time, I was single, and I was working in the Bronx and living in northern Manhattan, in Washington Heights. I had this beautiful apartment in Washington Heights. And I would take the subway to the Bronx every day. And every morning, I would see this really cute girl on the subway platform. And so, you know, I was noticing her, and she was cute, and I was like, oh, man, I really should, like, step to this girl and, like, talk to her at some point. So, you know, one morning, I made eye contact with her, and, you know, then I looked away, and she looked away. And then the next morning, I made eye contact with her, and I smiled at her, and she smiled back. And then the next morning, I made eye contact with her, I smiled at her, and I waved to her, said, good morning, and she said, good morning. And then the next morning, I walked up to her, and I talked to her. And long story short, we started dating. I asked her out on a date. We went out on a date. And I'll never forget, we went to the San Gennaro Festival, as a matter of fact, in Little Italy. And so we were coming back to my apartment after the San Gennaro Festival. And I didn't really expect her to come visit me after the festival, because the festival was relatively late at night, and I thought, you know, that we would say goodnight. But, you know, she agreed to come over, and so we could spend a little bit more time together. So we're on the subway to my apartment, and I'm thinking to myself, man, is my apartment clean? Like, I didn't expect to have anybody over. I hope everything.
Apartment.
Yeah, I hope everything's like in its place. And, you know, so I'm thinking like, yeah, no, I mean, you know, I keep the place clean. I didn't have anything. And then suddenly it hit me. Oh no. Sitting right on my coffee table, prominently in the middle of the room, is the Watchmen comic book on this table. And I'm like, I can't let this young lady see she's going to think I'm an utter dork. Like, I'm going to completely blow my chances with her. So I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I'm thinking, all right, think fast, rabbit. Like, so I'm thinking to myself, I know what I'll do. What I'll do is I'll open the door, and I won't turn on the light, or maybe I'll turn on the light, but I'll block, like, her line of sight to the coffee table, and I'll make a beeline to the coffee table, and I'll, like, get rid of the comic book somehow. I'll stick it under I don't know, throw it under something, whatever. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, but I've got to do it, because I can't let her see this. So you would have thought it was like a dirty French magazine or something. It was just a comic book. So we get to my apartment, and I put the key in the doorknob. I open up the doorknob. I'm like, all right, this is it. This is my only chance. And I flip on the light, and I'm about to make a beeline to the coffee table, and she goes, "Is that the Watchman?" And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I love the Watchmen. She says, you like comic books? I was like, yeah, I do. She's like, I love comic books. And turns out her favorite comic book is Spider-Man, and Peter Parker is like her imaginary crush.
Relationship? Yeah, I love comic books.
Yeah, it was a hilarious story. So anyway, that's my Watchmen story. But isn't that funny? That, you know, and it never even occurred to me that's where Ozymandias' name came from. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So before I move on to the other paragraph, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Professor Benito Ozymandias character, to the extent that you can remember? I mean,
can't remember much about him, other than I knew that he was working for the other one of the three of the Axis.
Yeah, well, he was. We have him here as occultist and advisor to Benito Mussolini, which is another thing I kind of dug about this, is that so you not only like introduced the element of the gypsies as being one of the targets of the Nazis, which is historically accurate, but you also introduce the fascists of Mussolini as villains. And look, you know, a lot of people don't know this. In the middle of World War II, Italy switched sides. A lot of people don't know that. They were an Axis power for the first half of World War II, but the Italians hated Benito Mussolini. As a matter of fact, when he died, they dragged his corpse through the town and hung it upside down in the plaza.
And his girlfriend or wife? Girlfriend.
Yeah, they hated Mussolini. And as soon as that bastard was dead, they joined the Allies, like, immediately. So they actually became the good guys by the end of the war. But
actually, that's happening in the movie that I suggested, which was Von Ryan Express, is that the Italians at that point are actually switching sides. We've defeated them, and then the Germans are coming in to take over a prisoner of war camp. It's a prisoner of war camp escape movie.
Right.
But,
yeah, Italian, we're not fighters. I mean, maybe the Roman Empire was, but ever since the Roman Empire, we're lovers. We're not fighters. So anyway, I like the fact that you made some villains out of the Italian fascists, because they don't get a lot of play. It's always the Nazis. When you do these period pieces in the 30s and World War II, they're the go-to villain. It's nice to see, that you brought these other villains in. So I like that. All right, so I guess that's all there is to say about that. Let's move on to the next paragraph with the thrilling climax in it. Sir Heathcliff, Kara, and Wilhelm staged a daring raid on the private car in which Benedict was being held. As Sir Heathcliff and Ozymandias engaged each other in a death-defying duel on the roof of the train, Kara, still inside the train, thought she saw Ozymandias preparing to murder Wilhelm. Unbeknownst to Kara, her vision was but an illusion cast by Ozymandias, and as she lurched forward to save Wilhelm, she lunged for an open door in the train car just as the train was passing over a bridge, connecting the ends of a gaping chasm. Now, before we go on to the final cliffhanger, I just want to say, when we got on the train at the beginning of this session, I had one goal. I built Heathcliff with a sword cane, and come hell or high water, I was going to have a sword fight on the roof of this train. Little did I know that was your singular goal as well, was to have it. Yeah. So here we are, great minds think alike. The two of us, GM and player, both have one goal in mind the second the PC step on the train. And boy, that was glorious. I loved the sword fight. I gave it short shrift in the summary, but I remember it. It was so exciting. It was great. I remember climbing up on the train. I remember drawing the sword on guard with Ozymandias and rolling and the dice and having the sword fight with him. Lot of fun. And as you said, a typical trope.
Absolutely, and it was a great game. It was a fun moment, and it was a moment where we were slowly coming together as to what the story was going to be like, what the stories were going to be like. I think the first 2 or 3 episodes were kind of like, what are we doing with this? And then we're slowly coalescing to something a little more. We're getting an idea of what the game is going to be about,
Yeah, we're hitting a stride.
The story went all over the place, but just what the feel of it was going to be and what we wanted out of it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and it's expected that the story would go all over the place because we were doing this cliffhanger mechanic, and also we, from the outset, anticipated it as being a globe-trotting, high-adventure pulp campaign. So yeah, sure, it was going all over the world. One session we're in this part of the world, next session we're in that part of the world. But you're right, this is where we start to hit, I think, our stride.
So far we've had planes and trains. And eventually, do we get automobiles?
We'll get some automobiles. Yeah, we'll get them in there. All right. Any final thoughts before we jump into the cliffhanger?
No.
All right. Then hold on to your fedora. Sir Heathcliff reached for Kara and missed as Kara toppled forward out the train car door toward a rocky death below.